Thank you, everybody. Please be seated. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of Council for Monday, November 27th in City Hall Council Chambers. I'd like to call this meeting to order and work through the process of approving the agenda. First, I'd like to recognize that we were on the unceded traditional territory of the Hupetchisitt and Sechot First Nations. Councillors, are there any late items? And City Clerk, any late items?
Mr. Mayor, there's one late item, a letter from Cycle Alberni, and we've got that in the agenda under H2.
Okay, thank you. Then a motion, Council, to approve the agenda as altered and with the addition of, or circulated with the addition of any late items.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. Brings us to adopting the minutes. We have a special meeting held at 4 p.m. and a regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. on November 14th. A motion to adopt those minutes.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. That brings us to our public input period. It's an opportunity for the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. Maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each will be accommodated. Anybody wish to address council? Yes. Please come forward, and even though we know who you are, please give us your name and address.
Sarah Thomas, 9th Avenue. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to get up here. I am not going to speak to the letter from Cycle Alberni. That's not why I'm here. We were initially intending to come because I am so excited about this bike map. And by now, you may have already seen it because it has been out for a couple of weeks. But wanted to bring them here and show off and pass to anyone who wants one. It was an initiative of Cycle Alberni with sponsorship thanks to Coastal Community Credit Union, the City of Port Alberni, Ecolab Right Now, Pedigo, Electric Bikes in Qualicum Beach, Hupetchisitt First Nation, Aussie Cycle, Healthy Habits, Alien Sports, and B&A Transmissions. And so there are a good number of these maps available around the community. They're at the locations of all of the sponsoring organizations, as well as at the Chamber of Commerce and many other businesses. So if you see anyone and they want a map, you can let them know that they can get a nice little nifty Port Alberni cycling map that shows the connection with the on-road routes as well as the trails. So anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you, and we have those for distribution right on the counter here at City Hall. Thanks, Sarah.
There you go.
Okay, anybody else wish to address council? Okay, in that case, council, that brings us to our delegation. We have a delegation from the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change Strategy. And I believe we have Glenn Okrantz, Director, Director, and Natalie Suzuki, Air Quality Science Specialist, and Earl Plain. There we go. Welcome. Just so we know, we have 10 minutes for our delegations, and I'll give you a 2-minute sign as we get close towards the end of the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak with you today about the air quality management system being implemented across the country and what this means for Port Alberni. Oops. Help. There we go. That's actually got the bottom of the slide cut off. I don't know. Could I just ask you to maybe advance the slides? Thanks. So the reason we're here today is because in October of 2017, the Ministry of Environment released a number of air zone reports for the province. These air zone reports characterize air quality in certain regions or air zones across the province, and the most recent results show that Port Alberni actually exceeds the national standards, air quality standards for PM 2.5. These are the fine particulates that are microscopic in size that are associated with both respiratory and cardiovascular impacts on human health. So PM 2.5 is a concern for us. So what I'd like to do over the next few minutes is just provide more information on what this air quality management system is, what are air zones and air zone management, talk about the results from the air zone reports, and what this means for Port Alberni. Thank you. This schematic just basically summarizes the air quality management system, or AQMS, built on a foundation of collaboration and accountability with the Canadian Ambient Air Quality Standards as the driver for action to protect human health and the environment. So these are national benchmarks for air quality, and the mechanisms for achieving these standards are industrial emission requirements made for major industry to ensure a good level of performance across the country, collaboration on transportation emissions, coordination on emissions that cross jurisdictional boundaries, and key here is air zone management as a comprehensive approach to improving air quality. Next slide, please. Skip a slide. So air zones are smaller geographical areas with common air quality issues that are the basis of monitoring, reporting, and taking action on air quality under this new system. Port Alberni is part of the Georgia Strait air zone. There's 7 broad air zones that were identified across the province. So the Georgia Strait air zone covers most of southwestern BC, except for Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley Regional District, which are part of the Lower Fraser Valley air zone, which has different more urban issues. Next slide, please. How are air zones managed? Well, the colors don't come through very well, but this is the air zone management framework that was put together by the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment to provide guidance on air zone management. It's based on the premise that as air quality is degraded and approaches the standards or exceeds the standards, that more rigorous actions are expected. So each of these different color coding the management levels are associated with specific PM 2.5 and ozone concentrations that are the same across the country. So this system is used to characterize air quality as well as to guide the level of management activities that may be considered. So you'd expect more rigorous action as you move from green to yellow to orange to red. Next slide, please. So the air zone reports. There's 3 main objectives regarding these air zone reports. They are a commitment for us under the air quality management system to report annually on this. They summarize achievement of the national standards for 2 pollutants, fine particulates and ground level ozone. They assign air zone management levels, so those color-coded levels, and also they describe activities underway to reduce emissions. So the latest reports for 2014 to 16 data are available on our website and through the hyperlink on the electronic files here. Okay. This is a slide from some plots from the yes, from the most recent air zone reports summarizing PM 2.5 levels across the air zone. Ozone is not continuously monitored in Port Alberni, so I'm not going to talk about ozone today. But in terms of PM 2.5 concentrations, there's two measures that are shown here. The top plot summarizes the daily concentrations, near extreme daily concentrations compared to the standard, which is identified by the red line. And the bottom plot shows the annual concentrations compared to the national standard. So you see that Port Alberni is identified by the arrow near the top. So focusing on the top plot, daily concentrations, most sites in the Georgia Strait air zone meet the standard, except for two sites in Courtenay and Port Alberni. Port Alberni has a value of 30 micrograms per cubic meter compared to the standard of 28. And the bottom plot shows that all sites within the Georgia Strait air zone meet the annual national standard. Next slide. So the next step is to identify air zone management levels. And air zone management levels are based on the levels that jurisdictions can have some control over. So we take the measurements at the as measured concentrations of PM 2.5, and we exclude those values that we believe to have been influenced by transboundary or exceptional events, and in this case wildfires are the key here. So we sift through wildfire statistics, smoky skies advisories, satellite images to tease out which days, focusing on the periods of high concentrations during the summer, which days were influenced by wildfires, and then to remove that data and then to apply that color-coded management scheme to these concentrations. So focusing on the colored columns on the left, those are the management levels set for each community based on the daily concentrations, showing that Courtenay and Port Alberni are in the red, meaning that they exceed the standards even after wildfire influences are excluded. And the next column, colored column, is based on the annual mean concentrations, so no sites exceed the standard. And finally, on the air zone management level, for the whole air zone, is based on the highest concentrations that are observed across the region for either the daily or the annual concentrations. So in this case, the air zone is red on the basis of the levels in Courtenay and Port Alberni. Next slide. So what's the ministry's response? In general, the ministry's response is to build on the requirements and programs that are already in place, both provincially and federally, to support continuous improvement and keeping clean areas clean in all communities of the province. And then there's the additional priority areas that require additional action. So this would include the areas that, for instance, have been assigned a red management level. So we understand that more specific local action is needed there. So on the left column is an example of some of the provincial activities supporting the monitoring network. Regulatory reviews already underway, like the open burning smoke control regulation, which has been a long time coming, but I understand there is progress on that. $200,000 in provincial funding for the wood stove exchange program over the next year to support the change out of old smoky wood stoves with cleaner burning appliances, and supporting BC Lung outreach activities like the air quality health forums that take the experts out of UBC and bring them to different communities around the province so that local citizens have more access to this sort of information. In terms of the priority areas, this is an example of this. Begin engaging local government on what the results of the air zone reports are, and opening a dialogue on how we're going to work together to try and improve air quality. Some of these other activities include identifying information gaps related to the what we know about air quality and the sources that contribute to the issues, building on local air quality management plans, such as what was done for the Cowichan Valley Regional District, and ultimately identifying ways to reduce emissions over time. Next slide. So we know Port Alberni's been very active in terms of air quality management for a long time, and I think a very important step was the establishment of an air quality council. Probably it was over a decade ago, I believe, which has been instrumental in both public outreach activities as well as supporting bylaw development. So I've got a number of milestones, I think, in terms of Port Alberni activities up there, and I can't go through them all. But you know, I understand that Port Alberni's been a leader in terms on Vancouver Island, at least in terms of new bylaws on installation of new installations of wood burning appliances, open burning bans within city limits. Recently supported a wood stove survey to better understand wood stove usage in this area. So there's a number of activities I think that Port Alberni can build on. Next slide. But obviously the results of the monitoring show that there's still some work to be done in terms of Port Alberni and air quality and fine particulate levels. But what the red status does mean for Port Alberni is that Port Alberni is a high priority for the ministry in terms of providing the technical support and strategic funding to understand, what sources, what conditions and sources contribute to this poor air quality, and also to ultimately determine what can be done in the short term and over time to reduce PM 2.5 emissions in this area. So next steps, this is the beginning. I shouldn't say it's the beginning of the dialogue because I understand Earl Plain has been working with the Air Quality Council for a number of years. So maybe it's to provide a new incentive to continue the discussions on how we can improve air quality in this community. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are the others with you as experts? And they'll stand up to answer any questions?
Yes, and they will ask her all the tough questions. Glenn O'Kranitz and O'Plain, as you know.
Okay.
Sure. If you have any questions.
I'm sure Council does have some questions. I know I have a couple of questions, and one of the major ones is, we're not in an airshed that's independent of everything else that goes on here. So I'd be really curious to find out from you what further things you think we would be able to do as a city, what the sources of the 2.5 PM 2.5 are, because clearly it wouldn't be just one source, it'd be a number of sources. What, if anything, would be our capacity as a city to influence those sources? Because certainly a fair amount of what we're experiencing will be coming from outside in the regional district.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, air pollution knows no boundaries, so it doesn't stop at the city limits coming in or going out. I guess some of the work that Earl Plain has done in terms of this comprehensive air quality report that he completed last year on Port Alberni is that a couple of sources stand out. And this is based on looking at the historical data and the variations in time and space of these high PM 2.5 concentrations. So, in the fall time, the winter time, periods of calms, light winds certainly, and inversions certainly tend to trap pollutants within the valley. But some of the work that Earl's has done points to things like wood stoves, for instance, and obviously there's been a lot of work done on wood stoves and open burning as potential sources that may require further follow-up. In terms of some of the potential actions that may be taken, I don't know, maybe Glenn might be better.
So there's a number of things that we share here. One is that within my budget each year, I proposed a pot of money to support communities that are red above the Canadian Air Quality Standards. So in the last couple of years, we've co-funded with Smithers and Vanderhoof the door-to-door wood stove survey, like the one you've done. This year, we're co-funding with the Baltic Valley Lake District Air Management Society a micro-emissions inventory so that they can really get a handle on the details of the sources. So we're certainly open to that type of partnership with the city. In the case of both Comox Valley and Cowichan Valley, which were identified in an earlier air zone report for an early reporting period as being red, we worked primarily with the regional district as well as individual communities. So I could see us working with Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District as well as yourselves on sources that might be impacting the city of Port Alberni. And then there's some tools that we might be able to help with. For example, right now we're in a partnership with Health Canada and PG Air to create some new, let's say, more modern platforms for the Burn It Smart type campaign. So up till now, as part of the exchange program, you get a DVD telling you how to operate your stove, how to have clean, dry fuel. And not a lot of people even have a DVD player anymore, so we're creating 3 videos that we can stream, we can put on a variety of platforms, so certainly we can make sure that you're aware of those and you can push them and promote them within your community. There's other tools like community-based social marketing. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. That's where you might hire a co-op student or something like that who would go around during firewood season. When people are dumping the firewood, they're starting to split it, and they stop. And community-based social marketing is about getting commitments. So they might go up to people and hand out a free moisture meter. Say, when your wood's this dry, this is when you should burn it. And do you know how to store it properly? And if you do, that's great. If you don't, we've given out before, as part of the wood stove changeout program, blueprints for building a proper wood storage unit that will help it dry and cure more quickly. And then you ask them to sign a commitment that they'll do all these things, and you check back when the wood should be cured, and you see if they've done it. And by doing that, you actually get people to have a much higher rate of following those guidelines than simply handing them a brochure, read this, good luck. So there's a variety of ways that we may be able to help out, and we'd be happy to build on the strong relationship that Earl's developed.
Anything else, Council? Councillor Paulson?
Actually, we have to give credit where credit is due in the improvements, and thanks for bringing those to light. I remember when I moved here, I had a black car, and I'd wash it, and it'd be just covered in fly ash. Like, what's the sense in washing it? I guess this is a hypothetical question, but in your presentation there, you had interjurisdictional pollutants from province to province. And actually, my question goes even further afield than that. Do you think there are times when we're affected by pollution from China and in those areas actually coming through the jet stream and affecting the west coast of Canada in particular? And I know it's hard to quantify that, but I look at China as being one of the great pollutants in the world, and we're downwind from them.
Yeah, I don't know about the specifics, you know, can point to specific studies that looked at the influence of Chinese pollution from China, but certainly the Siberian wildfire incident a few years back is an example of, you know, how pollutants were transported, you know, from Russia basically, you know, across the Pacific to impact air quality in British Columbia. So, you know, certainly that is a possibility there, but it's not one that at least the province has looked at.
Right. And my second question just is the 2.5 reading. That's or the PM 2.5, but the red reading. Are those taken on specific days, and is it seasonal that those those are taken, or I'm just curious about the hit on that red particular 24 hours.
So the actual method for determining achievement of the standard is based on something called the 98th percentile of your daily concentration. So you're basically taking, if you have a full year of data, I think it's the 8th highest value over the course of that year, and then averaging it over 3 years. So certainly there is an emphasis on the higher concentrations. And what I found in going through the exercise of trying to identify wildfire influences is that most of the peak concentrations in terms of daily averages occur during the fall and winter.
Okay.
2015 was an exceptional event when there was very high concentrations measured over a period in July of that year because of wildfires.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I sit on the Air Quality Council, and it's great to hear, you know, especially the social aspect. That is a really exciting potential avenue to get more out there. I see, you know, I think we see an opportunity because our wood stove ban is just coming into effect now. It would be interesting to see if that, you know, in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, how that affects our ratings. Hopefully it goes down, but there's certainly more to do. I think number one will be, you know, whether we can get traction from the regional district and widen, you know, the actions that have happened in the city into the regional district, and then the open burning smoke control regulation. Do you have any more information about whether that's going to come forward soon, or is there any?
So the open burning smoke control regulation, we did the ministry did an audit, a compliance enforcement audit in about 2003 or 4, and determined that it's not very workable right now in terms of making sure that people comply with it. So 3 staff and 4 kids later, we're still working on revising the open burning smoke control regulation. It's quite complicated. We've had several runs at different alternatives to try and come up with a workable solution. The latest proposal is to come out with high, medium, and low smoke sensitivity zones. So the high would be around communities. There'd be much more restrictive burning controls put in place there. The low would be distant places where it would be more relaxed, and the medium would be everything in between, which would be about the same current requirements. So we hope to have those maps to share with stakeholders. We'll be setting up webinars hopefully early in the new year, or certainly in the spring, so that we can explain how it will work to people. Then, unless there's more kids and staffing changes, we'd hope to take it forward to Cabinet sometime in the first half of next year so that it's in place for future burning seasons. But I have said this before.
Well, we can hope.
Yes.
So, do you think that there are areas of the city that are more impacted by wood smoke than other areas, or where it's more prevalent than in other areas? And also, I'm wondering, is it only wood stoves that are eligible for a trade-in incentive, or is there an incentive as well for fireplace inserts, for example?
I'll deal with the second part first, and then I'll let Earl, who has the local knowledge of where the hot spots are. But we've had a question about fireplaces before, but the reality is fireplaces are used very little in comparison to a wood stove, because they tend to be, if you ever burnt in your fireplace, if you have one, you'll notice that you suck most of the heat out of the house and up the chimney. So in this part of the province, they tend to be more decorative and used a few times a year. And as you get up into the interior, virtually nobody would just use an open fireplace. They would have either an insert or something. So for the time being, we focus just on the non-certified wood stoves and getting them to a cleaner type of heat. In an ideal world, we'd be able to assist with an incentive that would really push very clean heat. The reality is people use wood stoves. They have access to a relatively inexpensive fuel. And so if you're only giving them a few $100s, they're probably not going to install a heat pump. Or they were going to install it already, and this is just a little bit of help. So for the time being, fireplaces are not on the map. We've got about 70,000 wood stoves outside of the Lower Fraser Valley that we're focusing on first. So, Earl?
Good evening, everybody. I guess in terms of hotspots, probably the best indication for hotspots would be the work that was done by Bernadette Whiten a number of years ago, and she did some mobile monitoring using an instrument in the back of a car paired up with a GPS, and she was able to drive around the community over a number of nights and map out where those different concentrations were. And what we found was that there's quite a lot of variability night to night, depending on what's going on within those neighborhoods. So it could be somebody using a wood stove, somebody not using a wood stove, a number of people using wood stoves, some open burning occurring in one area and not in others. So we see quite a bit of variability. But overall, probably the hottest area was in the neighborhood, probably close to where our current monitoring site is. So north, kind of North Port area, and then we also saw, I think, Central Port. There was another area, so up near 10th Avenue, Fire Hall area, and then down near Sachat as well. The Sachat in the reserve lands down there. The North Port hotspot was generally attributable to drainage winds carrying emissions from the areas up around Cherry Creek. So any kind of open burning emissions that were occurring in that area tended to drain out of that area during the nighttime. Just follow the terrain, just kind of like water, and carry the smoke with it. And down into the valley bottom, we'd pick it up at our monitoring station.
So you're saying it's smoke from the Cherry Creek residence that is sitting in the Port Alberni, on the top of the Port Alberni residence. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else, Council? Councillor McClellan?
Thank you. Yeah, I got a question. What is this particulate that you're worried about? I kind of look at myself as a bit of a litmus test. I'm an asthmatic. I have no trouble in Port Alberni. And I feel real sorry for the people in Comox every time I turn on the local radio and they say they got an air quality warning, because that goes out over everywhere. And people say, well, I'm not going to go to Comox because they got bad air. And they really don't. It's a little teeny bit over a very small particle. And I don't know what it's supposed to do to me. But I've been in Vancouver and not been able to breathe, or had difficulty breathing. I've been in Hong Kong and real difficulty breathing with all the pollution coming from China. Why are we being picked on for this little itty bitty thing? And what's it supposed to do to me? Why is it so bad? I'm afraid I'm not believing what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I guess to speak to your point, I mean, every individual is different, and even within the sensitive subpopulation, you know, every asthmatic is different and may react to different mixes of pollutants. For instance, in the urban areas, it may be nitrogen dioxide, for instance, that may contribute more, or ozone that may contribute more to, you know, your health effects. But fine particulate matter, you know, these are the tiny particles, as you say, largely associated with combustion operations and also produced in the atmosphere. But they're just small enough to get deeply within your lungs and have been associated with not only respiratory effects and cardiovascular effects, but also, you know, low birth weight, preterm birth, early mortality. So there's been a number of studies around the world at different ranges of concentrations that have all shown that fine particulate matter has potential health, severe health impacts at higher concentrations, and that there is actually no, I guess, threshold below which, you know, there's been no evidence of any effects as well. So that makes it certainly a priority for us. But in terms of, you know, why you wouldn't be affected by it and why others would, you know, I just, the appreciation that, you know, every individual is very different. Earl, I don't know if you want to add any more? Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So Glenn, Natalie, and Earl, thank you so much for your presentation. It's fascinating stuff. And obviously we have some conversations we need to have both within the city but also within the valley. So thank you. Council, that brings us to unfinished business. We have 2 notices of motion, and the first, the motions are, I'll call on Councillor McClellan to make these motions one at a time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first one is the Council of the City of Port Alberni directs staff to provide a report outlining steps to declare the Harbourview Apartments on 3rd Avenue a nuisance property under the revisions of the nuisance abatement bylaw, and I have a seconder. I'll explain why.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, all you have to do is drive by to have a look at the horrendous sight you see as you come into our downtown area or uptown area. And the alley behind there is almost too dangerous to walk in now. People are scared to go to work because of the people that are there and their perception. So I'm not sure if our bylaw covers that, but if it doesn't, we should probably start changing the bylaw, I think, and give our bylaw officer and police some weapons. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sauvé?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to elaborate a bit more of what Councillor McLennan was talking about. To the fact that I've been monitoring the area for some time now. There's a lot of activity happening within the area, a lot of people in and outs and so forth, which is normal for any type of establishment. There's a lot of our services been rendered there. I'm talking about city staff for cleaning up around the front and the back of the establishment. They're almost there on a daily basis. We have a lot of police presence visiting there on a daily basis, and the fire department also for first responders. So, you know, we could sit back and just, you know, watch this happen, but it's really putting a heavy weight on our services, and I feel this is the right time to address this issue. myself, speaking with a few of the neighborhood businesses and all that, they even went to the extra mile of actually putting a large, because they saw me cleaning up around there and they were just pretty much laughing at me, but at least they made an effort to put a large garbage bin behind there. And all they got was people actually throwing furniture in beside it and not really paying attention to anything. Now, do we blame the tenants or not? That's another point to having to prove. But one thing I can state is having the property management actually, you know, on a daily basis looking into that, and that I don't see. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Councillor? Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, just while we're on the topic of the Third Avenue kind of area, you know, in the past little while, it's I think really gotten out of control for a number of reasons, not just this building, but other buildings. And it's worth bringing to council. I think that, you know, I've been contacted, and I'm sure council has been contacted by people, businesses, who have said that, you know, they're not comfortable in that area, and that's the first time that they've truly not felt comfortable in that area. So anything that I think we can do to alleviate what seems to be an emergency situation that's gotten worse over time. You know, if this is a first step for Harborview, maybe we need to look at doing the same kind of thing for the Beaufort or for the Carlson or you know, other buildings that potentially cause these kind of problems. So just putting it out there that there's a lot of concern in the community and in that specific area, and it's starting to affect whether people are going to be up there, including businesses.
Right. Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree completely with moving forward with this. I think we just need to be cognizant of the fact that if, you know, this does eventually lead to the building possibly being shut down, I mean, hopefully it leads to clean up and that kind of thing, but that another housing of the same level will just be created somewhere else, and we need to look at more constructive ways that the city can get involved and support creating affordable and housing that people can move into, supportive housing or whatever type of housing that ends up being.
Councillor McClement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think it's worth saying during this debate, I guess, that I've had several calls today from business people talking about squatters in buildings. They can't get them out just a block or two from here. So I'll probably be bringing, if other councillors don't, motions on other buildings, even the one directly across the road from the Harborview, the what they call a racket club or something. Every time I go by, there's another chunk out of the front. It looks uglier. And I don't know what they're doing, but if that keeps up, that would be another one, Mr. Mayor, but that's just an observation. There's actually, even in Northport, there is a squatter in one of the stores. I heard, we haven't checked for sure today, but in that little mall where the bakery is and the pawn shop and so on.
Yep.
So I understand there's one of those buildings. A business person told me that today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sobey?
I just think we need to be careful here when we're talking about squatters and so forth and all that. If there's a complaint about trespassing, especially trespassing at night, let's get it documented and actually have the police look into the matter and see what their circumstances are, why that person is there. If it's a simple fact of asking the person, please move on and trespass, I don't want to mix that up with ongoing issues inside an establishment. But, you know, if we're having squatters and so forth trespassing, that issue should be dealt with by the police and further looked into. You know, I don't want to start kicking people out of shelter when they're actually dealing with mental health or other issues.
Council, let's focus on this particular motion that's here.
Yeah, well,
which is the Harborview.
The councillor mentioned it, so I just wanted to talk about it. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on this motion? Then all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Councillor McClement, you had a second motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to change it just a little bit because I think a carte blanche is maybe not the best way to go. the council of the city of Port Alberni directs staff to come up with a program to give preference to local vendors for purchase of goods, materials, and services. I have a second, I'll explain that.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, up until now, we've had an awful lot of got to take the low bid. And if we don't take the low bid, we can't do this, can't do that. But the provincial government that has just been elected has publicly, the premier at least, has publicly come out and stated that the low bid isn't always good. It doesn't always give us any benefit for our own people being working and so on. Some of the big ones, I guess, for the BC ferries and stuff, but that's not ours. I hear quite a few complaints from local businesses, and I don't know if they're valid because I'm not in a position to know. So I would like to see a stronger local purchase and local hire for contractors than what we have. I know we did it once before, and it sort of like kind of isn't very strong. So thank you.
Okay, we actually do have, just to respond, we do have a policy, but it's obviously not to the liking that you're hoping for. And personally, I'd like to see if council does come back to us with the report, if this motion passes, that within that report it's put into context so we can see what's happening in other communities as well. And I believe the ACRD, the regional district, has a policy on local preference for local purchasing. It'd be good for council to have a look at those other examples.
And just on that, Mr. Mayor, I don't think it should be carte blanche. Sometimes if people can take advantage of that if they know they're going to get the contract anyway. So we got to be cautious.
Yeah. Anything else, council?
Answer my question.
Okay. So. On the motion, are you clear in terms of the motion, CAO?
Mr. Mayor, I heard the motion as direct staff to develop a purchasing policy that supports local vendors. Is that correct?
That's worded just fine enough.
Okay. Is that sufficient so that we can put it into context with other examples?
Vendors and contractors. And what we would do, council, with that is staff would investigate other jurisdictions, come back with a report, perhaps a proposed policy with some background information that included other jurisdictional policies. Okay.
Councillor Paulson?
So you were saying that we actually have a policy similar to this point in time. Like,
we have a policy and the intent is there. It's just maybe not as well written as it could be. So I know that Councillor McClellan knew that the policy was there. He's just looking for clarity. I think. Stronger, okay. On the motion then, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Council, that brings us to staff reports. The first one is on accounts. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated November 14, 2017 be received, and checks numbering 140064 to 140239 inclusive, and payment of accounts totaling $1,248,973.02 be approved.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Carried. And from the Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage Council, Community Investment Program, we have a report dated November 27th, providing recommendations to the committee for the 2018 Community Investment Program. Councillor Paulson, do you want to move that the report be received, please?
I'd like to move that the report dated November 27th, 2017 be received, and Council for the City of Port Alberni approve the 2018 Community Investment Program recommendations of the Grant Review Committee contingent on receipt of the 2017 final reports.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? Director.
Thank you. So first of all, this is of course my first CIP cycle that I've been involved in, and I'd first like to commend council on the program itself. It's clear based on receiving over $100,000 in requests from over 30 separate organizations that the program is working. So it's great to see. A couple of items I wanted to draw your attention to. The impact of this program is evident in applications like the Alberni Valley Wrestling Club. So that organization could leverage the $2,500 they may receive from council from the CIP program towards, they could sort of leverage those dollars toward thousands of other dollars from other funding sources. So this again reinforces that this type of program works. Secondly, a CIP grant that may cover operating costs for the Port Alberni Volunteer Income Tax Program provides service to over 750 Port Alberni individuals completing various forms who could otherwise would not necessarily have access to that type of service. So those are a couple of great applications that we saw that really reinforces that this type of program works. I do want to draw your attention to the last page, the sort of chart or table outlining the requests. So just on the next page there, please. So a little bit of fine print there, but you'll see the applicant on the left-hand side. Middle of the columns there is the request, and then on the far right side was the recommendation from the committee. So you'll see that there's a few delineated requests at the bottom there. So there's the top, over 30 applicants. The black line indicates a couple of late requests. So a few of the late requests I wanted to bring your attention to. The first one is the Alberni Valley Hospice Society's request for purchasing fireworks for their great annual Sail Pass event this December 3rd at Harbour Quay. And so it's the first line under the black there that you'll see the request is for $5,000. So keeping in mind that the request for funds was received on October 16 of this year, the application deadline for the 2017 cycle was actually October 2016. And so the 2018 requests, so of course for next year's events, were due on October the 2nd. So this request in actuality is a year and 2 weeks late, essentially. And so the proposed resolution on the second page recommends that the request for the 2017 be denied, the request deferred to the 2018 CIP cycle, and then awarded $1,000 in cash for their 2018 Sail Pass event. The second note I want to bring your attention to, excuse me, is that it's recommended that the late request from the Alberni Classical Concert Society be denied because they've already actually been approved in the 2018 CIP cycle. So they're listed as applicant number 2 in that chart. So they're already receiving dollars for this current cycle. So since it's a duplicate or a secondary application, the committee is recommending that the second request be denied. And then the third applicant I'd like to bring your attention to is the Aerosmith Skating Club's initial request was $1,500, covering materials and wages. And the club was actually able to decrease their ask of the CIP committee because they went out, got creative. They were able to actually get $500 in materials donated from other sources. And so the ask has actually decreased to $1,000, representing what might be staff wages to cover this project. I confirmed with our carpentry staff that because we've already got a backlog of other existing municipal projects, that I would wager a guess that they wouldn't be available to take on additional work. So the CIP committee has recommended that transferring that $1,000 ask from in-kind staff wages to cash, so they're able to go out and source out different carpentry work. So all that said, I'd like to welcome any questions council might have.
Okay. Council?
So we're just talking about the first motion right now, are we?
Yes, we're just talking about the first motion. Yes, Councillor
Questions on the further?
Just one question. If you get a certain group that asking, let's say $1,000 for a specific event, and they're receiving, let's say, $500, and they're not able to have the event, are those funds immediately returned?
Part of it is they're going to see how the entire process will work. What we've done, and Councillor Paulson as one of the members as well of the CIP committee can also jump in, is that we look at with the funds that the committee is recommending is based on their ability to do things like fundraise from other sources. So you'll see there's a couple of notes in that table that say, well, just a minute here, with that group's ability to raise funds, I think we might need to decrease the recommended value, whereas other groups that wouldn't have that same ability to leverage funds or the same ability to fundraise, we would potentially support those greater. So yes, it's a sliding scale based on their ability to fundraise. As far as the idea that of an event not being able to complete at all, that's something that we would definitely look to revisit as well. If there's an organization that is incapable of running an event without this sort of support, in my mind, it's how do we get there? So we're not in the business of trying to turn folks away or have events collapse. It's how can we look to get creative? So for instance, with the skate club, rather than saying our staff's already in a backlog, you'll have to go somewhere else, we're trying to get creative with shifting funds as best we can.
Okay, Councillor Alberni.
Just since we're talking about the motion, I think to approve the 39, there, that list of 39, it does speak to our late item as well, which is the request from the Cycle Alberni folks for $3,800, which was denied in this round. So I don't know if should we look at this at the same time as we're considering this, because it's kind of the same issue, but I don't know, I'm looking towards the CAO for guidance.
Well, it was put into H2 so we can
I'm just thinking if we have it at H2, then that's going to be after when we actually make a decision about it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, I wonder if Director Thorpe can speak to a late item from Cycle Alberni. Was there an application from Cycle Alberni, and is it being recommended denied within the process?
I haven't had the chance to. The short answer is I'm not sure. Based on I'm not too familiar with the late item. So in what the CA is referring to is application number 14, number 13, the Alberni Valley Transition Town Society, is the Bike to School Education Project. So that may also be covered off as well in the late item. And in that specific request from the Transition Town Society, it was recommended actually that the application be denied based on the ability to for that group to obtain other funding sources. So with things like school district involvement, provincial government funding, potential federal options as well. To Councillor Sauvé's point, is that ability for groups to survive without the CIP funding. Specifically with the Transition Town Society, the committee felt that there were other options for them. So again, I can't say with certainty that it speaks to directly to the late item, but I have a hunch that it is probably quite closely related.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Director Thorpe. So that says to me that this application was received on time and considered, and the recommendation from the committee is to not approve the application. So then the late item is calling that to Council's attention that the application was made. This is a recommendation from Council's committee. Council can endorse that recommendation or modify it at Council's discretion.
Were you thinking that if it doesn't go through CIP that somehow we'd be addressing it through our budget deliberations? Is that what you're thinking?
No, Mr. Mayor, I was thinking that the CIP process is an excellent process, as Director Thorpe has pointed out, that what's up there, 35 applicants are within the process, and all of them leveraging city funds to a larger extent. So for a very significant impact on the community, positive impact. So I think the process is great, and I wouldn't suggest that council consider one-offs outside of the process. What I'm saying to council is that if council gave the committee terms of reference for how they should gauge these applicants. If council thinks there's one or more projects on there that council, for whatever reason, wants to approve, even though they don't meet the terms of reference set out to the committee, that's at the discretion of council. So you can make whatever choice you want to make. You have a recommendation in front of you. But I wouldn't suggest that you entertain specific applications outside of the CIP process. That would open a door that we wouldn't be able to close easily.
Right, that's what I was assuming. But Councillor Alberni?
Yeah, just to, I mean, I think what the CAO has said is, you know, this funding request did go through all of the process for CIP, and it was denied. And I think their letter I mean, they've put a lot into it just to make the point of needing that grant and that there wasn't other funding available for the programs that they're looking for. So it was a program for elementary school kids to access bicycle education programs. So I mean, like the CAO said, the council has an opportunity to grant that as part of the recommendations of the CIP or not. I think it's worth doing, and I think they've laid it out really well in their letter. But you know, it's up to council.
I agree that they've laid it out well in their letter. The thing that concerns me is there's only so much money, so we'd essentially be saying to the committee that we have confidence in. We don't have confidence in your decision, and we're now saying you go back and you figure out $3,800 that's been awarded to some other group, and they're going to lose out. So you know, I would think there's obviously been some deep thinking in this before they came to their final recommendation. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You said just about what I was going to say about we've tasked this group to determine these things, and if we go over their head, then their group, them as a group, are redundant. We've tasked them to do a job, and they're doing a very good job, and it's unfortunate that this didn't make it. However, I put my faith in this group that we've tasked to take this job away from us.
Councillor Paulson, then Councillor Sauvé.
I'm just going by memory on this particular application, but our portion of it was only a portion of the overall cost. And one of the things that struck the committee is there was no commitment from the school district and there was no commitment from Island Health. And for those who are doing grant applications, the other thing that came up around the table is the specified purpose for the actual funds was quite vague. Like it was, I think it was sort of like an administrative fund, or I can't remember the exact terms, but it was. So for people who are writing grants, I think they need to be pretty specific. You know, if this was going to hire somebody to run the program, I would probably look less favorably than if it was done by a volunteer sort of thing, or that sort of thing. So the actual application was much larger than this, and they did a great job. They pulled together the program. There was detail and everything, but we were disappointed that the school district and Island Health, who were applied to, basically were not participants, although one of the schools was, and the other one was the description of the use for the funds.
Thanks for that.
Councillor Sauvé?
No, I just wanted to agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that I expect that we follow the process that we have, and if we're not, then I would like 5 other requests that's been denied to come back to council, and I would just be setting the wrong precedent. As for this case, and I don't know if it's the right time to discuss now, but it's just there's other agencies like bicycle rodeos, safety that's being offered at the schools by the RCMP, so I wanted some more information as into what's the difference. And where the money is going exactly is just material and all that. But again, I fall on the committee to make those questions and research for me. But like I said, I just want the process to be respected. Thank you.
Very quick comment. And I go back to what you were saying before. There was 34 applicants for 37 projects, I think, and over $100,000. And basically, the budget was just a hair over 42. So you're really to stretch the thing. So
okay, thank you. On the motion then to receive and approve the recommendations, all those in favor? Carried. And Councillor Paulson, we have a second part to that.
That the request from the Hospice Society dated October 16th, 2017 is denied for the 2017 CIP cycle based on late submission. It be deferred to the 2018 CIP cycle and is awarded $1,000 in cash for the 2018 event.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any discussion, Council? Councillor Minions?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, and I'm not sure if you'll be aware of this, but I'm wondering, did they do fireworks last year, and where did their funding come from last year? Were they a late application. Did we give them funds last year?
They did fireworks, and maybe you're more aware of the timing. They're a year and 2 weeks behind in their application.
I understand they're a year and 2 weeks behind for this year. I'm wondering where their funding came from for last year's event, if they were late last year as well.
Yes, I believe they were late last year. I also believe it came across council's table to vote on. I believe council did provide funds. I couldn't speak to the amount, and so sort of the intention with this application, or with this, this proposed motion, would be that we can sort of do two things. First of all, honor the other 30 plus applicants and respect the process, and try to sort of curb this ongoing behavior of late applications. Say, you know what, let's give a little bit of benefit of the doubt for a 2-week late application for the coming year, and sort of set them on the right path, provide some dollars for next year to show that we're not just foregoing any effort by that group, and to hopefully sort of reset a little bit, get them on the right path, and then for future cycles, we curb this business of late applications. So to answer your question, yes, I believe it did come across your desks last year as a late item, and I believe there were some dollars for it.
That is correct, but there was nowhere near $5,000. A certain amount of it was self-funded, and some of it was from other businesses. So there was a fair amount of work done within the community to provide funding for last year's fireworks, and I don't know what's been done in order to pay for this next upcoming weekend's fireworks.
Right, and like you say, Mr. Mayor, around the idea that next year again, rather than the full $5,000 being honored or recommended, the recommendation is $1,000 cash instead.
Okay, I'll call a motion. All those in favor? Carried. And then, Council, we have a letter dated November 21st from the Mount Aerosmith Skating Club requesting support from the Community Investment Program by way of workmanship and installation of a judge's stand. Councillor Sauvé, do you want to make this motion?
The letter dated November 21st, 2017 from the Mount Aerosmith Skating Club requesting support from the Community Investment Program by the way of workmanship and installation of a judge stand be received.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor McClellan, sorry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think this is the one, if I'm not mistaken, that the director suggested giving them cash instead of using our staff. I'll have to leave that to her discretion. However, I don't know if this is a late one or just one that kind of got rejected or whatever. I'm not sure if Community Investment Program is the right place for it, but because of what it is, and because of what it's doing for the town of Port Alberni with 245 participants and their families, that fills up hotel rooms, that brings people to town, hopefully to have a good experience. And if this was soccer, if this was baseball, if this was hockey, I'd be 100% supporting it. I'm not much conversant with the skating community, but I do support this, and whatever the director thinks we should have, I would like to make that amendment to give that much and then receive it.
Were we going to need receipt of this with an addition of some money attached to this, or is?
No, out of the spirit of efficiency, this has actually already been recommended by the committee. So I have gone to the CIP committee. I agree with everything that Councillor McClemens indicated, that yes, it's actually in my initial diatribe of background information. The skate club was the group that was able to go and get creative, get those materials donated, and based on the backlog of work our carpenters have, the recommendation that's included in the motion there is this idea of transferring to $1,000 cash so that an external contractor can be lined up by the skate club to build that judge's stand.
So the committee's already allocated the $1,000.
Correct. So it would be captured within the initial motion that you've approved.
Thank you. Okay.
We're just receiving.
We're just receiving it. So do we actually need it after we've received your report?
I'm not.
Mr. Mayor, that letter came in as a late item, and it hasn't actually been received by council yet. So in the spirit of efficiency, I like that. Council preempted that, or sorry, staff preempted it, gave it to Director Thorpe. She had her committee consider it before, but council hasn't actually received it, so you just need to receive it.
Okay, so are you saying we're not going to need it in H2 in that case?
That's not the same. Not the same one.
We're not being very efficient right now.
All right.
This letter from the skating club is actually attached
efficient
to the back of Director Thorpe's report. I apologize that we hadn't been more clear up front that letter has not yet been received by council. Ordinarily, you would have received it, referred it to the committee, and they would have come back. Because we had time, we actually did all that work first, and now it's coming to you, already considered.
So you're saying have faith, Mr. Mayor?
That's correct.
All right.
We're saying just receive it.
This is our proof that it was requested.
All those in favor? Carried.
Now they do.
Thank you, Director Thorpe. Okay, Council, we have 3 recommendations from Committee of the Whole, where we met on November 20th. And so I've pulled those 3 recommendations out into 3 separate motions. The first one on the Stamp Avenue pathway, Councillor Alberni, do you want to move that particular motion?
I would, and I just have to point out, because I got this shirt on Saturday. It's got bikes all over it. It is the best shirt. It's from a certain establishment in town, and they're just fantastic. So anyway, it's awesome. I really wish I had it last week. So the motion is that the Committee of the Whole recommends that staff be directed at a future council meeting to provide information on the grant extension, and that staff look at both the west side on-street option with an extension to Rogers Street on the curb and any options on the east side.
Is there a seconder?
Second that.
Okay, we have a seconder. And just to point out, Council, that we have had a long meeting on all 3 of these items, so we're directing this to staff, and there isn't really a great need to debate these. But Councillor McClellan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Reading this motion, I guess it means we're going to cut down part of the driving area if this passes, and if we get the funds on Stamp Avenue and for cars and trucks and other transport. I still oppose that, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like a recorded vote.
Okay, I believe what we're asking for from staff is a little bit more clarity in terms of the costs associated with the west side versus the east side, and fully recognize that the Cycle Alberni is in support of the east side of Stamp Avenue.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we were told that the grant mayor won't be there long, so if we go to the east side with what we can get, we would have it. But I know we voted on this as a committee of the whole, so I would just, my opinion on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
Just to let you know, I won't support this motion as it's written, and I kind of wish that it had been broken out. We have a grant in place, and maybe I wasn't clear in the committee of the whole that I would like to have seen us proceed with the east side, and then a separate motion to come back with more thoughts, more concrete costing on the west side. I mean, when they go from $200,000 to $1 million, is obviously a lot more work that needs to be done. So I felt personally that we could proceed with the east side, and the west side could be investigated much further.
Okay. Councillor Washington. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The word I'm reading in this is information. That's all we're voting on, is asking for more information. It's not the time to debate it. It's to get more information on it, to debate it at a later date at a regular council meeting, right?
Right.
Thank you.
So, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? We want a recorded vote.
Please.
Councillor McClellan? Against. Councillor Paulson?
Against.
Councillor Sauve? Against. I'm in favor. Councillor Minions?
In favor.
Councillor Alberni?
In favor.
And Councillor Washington?
In favor.
The motion is carried. And next one, Council, was the strategy to address big city problems in Port Alberni. Councillor Minions, do you want to make that motion?
That the next committee of the whole meeting be directed to further
dedicated
to further address the report dated November 1st, 2017 from the CAO, providing a strategy to address big city problems in Port Alberni, and key stakeholders be invited to attend.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Is there any comment? Councillor McClement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, totally agree with the motion. I guess one thing I would like to just sort of note as the key stakeholders, I would like to see our bylaw officer and our economic development director at this meeting. And the other thing I'd like to request, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know if you would want a motion for that, is that we have an in-camera meeting prior to this committee of the whole, which would be very soon, I hope, to discuss specifics. And I don't believe the RCMP, who should be at this, would be wanting to talk about open cases in a public meeting right away. So I would hope we could have an in-camera meeting to discuss it with staff and with them.
Okay, I would just caution council that if we're talking about individuals, that's way beyond our scope as council. That's the role of professionals that we pay to do that work, not for publicly elected politicians. So I would really caution council on that, on heading down that road. Further, I see these, frankly, as two separate initiatives. For me, what we're asking for is for our staff to initiate a process that existed before and was actually quite successful, and that was a multi-agency committee that centrally included about 7 or 8 people, and then experts were brought in depending upon the specifics of the clients that were discussed. But you're talking about individuals, their situation, and exactly what resources can be brought to bear to support them. But I also see that this is a process that we need a separate committee, which may or may not already exist in the community, to provide an opportunity for the community to provide advice, suggest advice, express concerns about what is happening. So one is a public process, and the other one is a specific professional process. I see them as supportive, but not the same thing. And it may well be that we already have a committee that is addressing some of these issues, and maybe needs to be reinvigorated by council or recommitted to by council. Councillor Sauvé?
Thank you. I just want to elaborate more on what you're saying. You're absolutely right. First of all, we just need a meeting to address and have it open in the public, to indicate to the public what we're doing on the issues that we've just spoken of. As for internal process, I believe those are operational needs that will be dealt with by the detachment commander and whoever's in charge of first responders and safety. And yes, part of the crime reduction program with the RCMP, they do have their crime reduction team, and they work with all these partners, but again, those are based on operational needs. And that I don't think we should be involved in. But what we should be involved in is to give and explain our concerns to the police and ensure the public that we're actually doing something about it. Thank you. Well, they're going to.
Councillor Alberni?
Just really quickly, is there any indication when the next committee of the whole meeting might be, just for the public's sake?
Mr. Mayor, I was waiting for that topic. So, Mr. Mayor, we've been meeting a committee of the whole on the third Monday of each month. So we've had 2 meetings, and that's how it's fallen. And we were projecting into the new year having 1 meeting per month on the third Monday of each month. However, January and February we've blocked out for budget meetings, so we're not anticipating committee of the whole then, because those time slots are going to be filled with budget if council approves of our draft schedule. And because we're heading into December here, we'd be looking at December 18th. So I don't know if council wants to meet on December 18th, Committee of the Whole. There's potential we could meet the week prior. It would mean 2 meetings in the same week, and we'd have to make that a daytime meeting.
Councillor Sauvé and then Councillor Alberni.
Yeah, I would like to have the CEO actually speak with the inspector and the fire chief and so forth, and other certain stakeholders to discuss our concerns, and to the fact invite them at the meeting and see what their schedules are and work from there. And if you could come back to us and let us know. But again, I don't want to have to wait for this committee of a whole meeting to actually have something happening. Something is happening right now. It's operational. We can't discuss about it, but something is happening. So if the public thinks we're waiting for a meeting to get things going, it's already going. But if we need public input to raise their concerns and all that, the sooner the better. I just like to have these key people there. So I would like to see on their schedule when they be available.
Councillor Alberni, then Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure what Councillor Sauvé is talking about as far as what's happening. I know that the AV committee for the Community Stakeholders Initiative to End Homelessness is, of course, always engaged on this. But as to the question of when, certainly sooner the better. And if that's December 18th, I think that's when we should have it. Certainly not, delayed into the spring. It's something that needs to happen.
Okay. Councillor Minions.
Thank you. I just want to note that we're very focused around crime and policing operations, but there's a lot more to this discussion than crime. And I think if we focus around just what the RCMP is doing or just what bylaw, we're going to miss a huge portion of what this issue actually means to our community. So I'd be very supportive of having it December 18th or the week before, whenever we need to do it, as long as we don't put it off to the new year.
I don't know, I may be the only one here who participated in this committee in the past, and I was called in when I was principal of ADSS if there was a particular student who was being discussed, and I would be called in specifically for that student and what resources could the school contribute in order to assist this person. But as well, there would be somebody from probation, somebody from MCFD, whatever agencies needed to be brought to bear in order to improve the situation for the young person. So, as I said, there was a core group and then others brought in as necessary. That is something that could start virtually any time. It doesn't have to be us that starts it. But I do believe we have another committee that is a community committee, and I know Ron Jorgensen is part of that committee. I just can't remember the name of it. CAO, do you know the name that I'm thinking?
Thank you, Scott. Social planning. Committee for social planning.
Okay, so that particular group, I believe, is interested in sort of on a broad basis, how can people and organizations within the community be aware of what some of the issues are and discuss it in a more open, less personal format. So we wouldn't. I don't believe they focus on individuals, but they focus on structures and supports programs, what have you. And it may be that that members of that committee would be part of who we would be expecting to participate in such a meeting. I know that they would like to be strengthened somewhat by council if possible. In terms of the timing of this meeting, it has to work for each one of our schedules, and whether we can participate or not, that would certainly be an individual matter. We've had a council meeting once a week for about 3 weeks now, and we'll have another one next week and another one the week after. So that's a lot of meetings for us as council, and it's a lot for our staff to do. So if you're proposing now a 6th or 7th one each week in a row, that's a lot of meetings. And I, for one, I know that I have other things that I need to do both on a personal level and what have you. So I'd have to look at my schedule and my relationship to see whether or not I could do something like that. But let's focus on the motion, and that is, the motion is that the next Committee of the Whole meeting be dedicated to further address the report dated November 1st. That's been moved and seconded. So, all those in favor? It was. Yep. Carried. And then the third one is bringing back for clarification, the three parts that we discussed about the Alberni Valley Heritage Commission, and that's just confirming the vote that we made at our Committee of the Whole. So, Councillor Washington, I'm wondering if you want to make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the Committee of the Whole recommend the Council consider including the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District in any new governance model, establish the Alberni Valley Heritage Commission purpose under the leadership of Director of Parks and Recreation and Heritage, and review the current bylaw, make necessary revisions, and amend the Commission's membership list.
Is there a seconder for that? Second. Any discussion? CAO?
Mr. Mayor, could I ask that Council hear from Director Thorpe?
All right.
You warned us.
Slow down the efficiency. We'll take it one step at a time. Thank you. So before Council gives additional direction regarding including the ACRD in the governance model, I'd like to ask for an opportunity to review the current landscape with the Commission. So I'm scheduled to meet with the Commission this week, and I'd like the opportunity to present my findings to Council at the December 11 meeting.
So are you saying you don't want us to include the ACRD within this?
I'm requesting that before the motion passes that the ACRD is included in the future governance model. I'd like to request some time to review the governance model collectively with the initial tripartite motion. Review that first before we start to look at adding a fourth potential partner.
Okay, so I don't actually see that this motion would preclude that because it says consider including, it doesn't say must include.
Okay, so just for clarity's sake then.
So you may have considered it, and then for whatever reason you come back to us and you say you're making a recommendation that says we've considered it, but we think in particular, here's the context, here is the landscape that we're dealing with, and we want you to reconsider that.
Right. Exactly. So again, just for clarity's sake, there was much discussion at the Committee of the Whole, so I want to ensure we're all on the same page so that we don't move forward to December 11 or a later meeting, and then there's some concern about whether it's consideration or voting another group in or whatever the case is. So I'm comfortable with that.
All right. Let's move forward. On the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, Council, that brings us to the upcoming budget, the 5-year financial plan. And it's the development process that's outlined for us, and it's the schedule that we're particularly concerned about. And I bet you Councillor McClement has a concern about the schedule. Councillor McClement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I don't like it at all. I've been talking since September when we were promised to get this report by. If it was by October, it would have been okay.
Yep.
And when I talked to you, Mr. Mayor, you informally, I know, sort of said, well, before I go on holiday, this will be settled. Not even starting it till then. And I did consider that when I made vacation. I'd be here in this time for the budget. So I just was flabbergasted to see these dates. I think the January the 15th one should be December the 18th. And January 29th should be January 15th. And February 19th should be January 29th. And whatever the TBD is, could be February 19th, but that would probably be finished.
We may not need those TBDs depending upon how quickly we move through that. That's what I'm saying. By that time, we'd
probably be finished if we have one of them.
Yeah. So,
I'm really, I've made this point at every meeting for a while.
Yeah.
And I was told, don't worry, Jack, everything's going to be fine. I was told that by staff and not really by council, so I'm not criticizing anyone particularly.
Yeah.
but it's not fine in my opinion. We promised the city we would have this, the taxpayers would have this thing done sooner this time. We wouldn't be in a rush. We're going to be in a rush, and I won't vote yes for something I've done in a rush.
I have to say I was surprised by those 3 TBDs, but let's see, CAO, what is the shortest period of time we can get this done?
Mr. Mayor, we can meet as soon as council wants to meet.
Done. I said, what is the shortest period of time in which we could get this finished? There's 3 TBDs in there.
The entire process, you mean?
Yeah.
So if you go to the bottom of that page,
Yeah.
the hard stops we have are that we would need to be giving 3 readings to the bylaw by March 26th. That's a regular meeting of council. And until that date, we can meet as many times as council needs to meet.
What if we're finished all of our deliberations? Is there some legislative reason why we have to wait to March 26th?
No, these are the deadlines that they have to be done by those dates, but we can complete those.
We could get it done before that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we accepted the draft 5-year financial plan tonight, and then January 15th, we look at that, January 29th, we've got the e-town hall roundtable format. Is it possible on February 9th February 19th to finish the whole thing, ask any questions we have, clarification we have for our managers, and finish it up on the 19th of February? Or is that,
it really depends
is that
on,
over optimistic?
It really depends on, Mr. Mayor, on how much time council needs, to be honest. So what this schedule sets out is that there'd be a budget meeting proposed January 15th. We can change that date if council likes, where the draft budget would be brought back, the one that you have in front of you brought back. There'd be a general overview of what the direction was, how the budget meets council's direction. Any service impacts would be pointed out to council. We would overview or go over the capital plan, primarily the 2018 year, and we would review what we've been calling a projects options list, which was what we used last year. And I would hope that at that same meeting, council would finalize the projects options list. So council would determine what other items needed to be added to that list. And at the end of that meeting, we would say that list is now complete. And at the next meeting, which would be, we're proposing to be an e-town hall roundtable, where we take input from the public, and council consider, if you want to consider the operating budget or the capital budget, that's at your discretion. If you want to move into the project options list, you could hear more about those projects. You could ask the different department heads about each project. They could tell you why they think they're priorities, that kind of thing. You could take input from the public. And then we're proposing then another roundtable meeting that wouldn't be an e-town hall, where council again would interact with the department heads on specific questions and responses. And then the TBDs to be determined as many times as we need to meet between then and March 26th. So it's really up to council how much time you think you're going to need, how many contacts you're going to need with the budget before you're prepared to approve a budget.
Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that, I sympathize with Councillor McClellan on his, he was asking for this to come forward earlier, and it didn't, and I think you're legitimately upset, and that's fine, and maybe it should have come earlier. I don't have a problem though with how the schedule itself is set out. I think if we need to take time, then we need to take time, and council should consider it. So I don't think it's appropriate to set out exactly how many meetings we might need. Goodness help us if we need more than what we have here, and hopefully we need less. But that's going to be something that'll come out through the process, and especially the e-town hall and our project options list. I do hope that options list is sort of where we get bogged down, I think, a lot of the time. It would be nice to figure out a way of streamlining how we go through that list. Not in a way of minimizing anything, but just how do we do it more efficiently for the word of the night.
Well, we can see that the options are there about, we've got about $800,000 and about $1.5 million worth of proposed projects. There's good and bad in that. I'm just wondering if optimistically, if we think we can finish by February 19th. And if we put our mind to that, is that, in your opinion, CAO, something that's doable, or is that unrealistic?
It's hard to say, Mr. Mayor. It is doable, or it could be doable. It really depends on, again, on how much time council needs to ask questions and receive answers. Remember that for each of those meetings, there'll be questions asked that can't be answered.
Yeah.
And staff will have to go away and come back to the next meeting with responses. So when that happens, it means we need another meeting. So
okay. Again,
this is about council's comfort, and you need to tell us how often you need to meet. How many times you need to meet?
Councillor Paulson?
It's kind of like closing the gate after the cattle are out, but I know that this council has, for the last couple of years, been hoping that we could get this process started earlier. And I know the first couple of years, and maybe it's because we were new councillors, but we felt when we got into that crunch in January, February, and March that we were really under the gun, and we wanted to spread this process out. And I think we were hoping to have this report in October sometime, so that we could actually do due diligence and really work through the process properly. And it didn't happen this year, and it is what it is. But I think that's the overall wish. I don't want to speak for every council member, but I think that we wanted to start this process earlier so that we didn't feel that we're, both council and staff were under the gun, that we could take, for lack of a better word, a more leisurely pace and do our homework, as Councillor Sauvé would say. So anyway, that's just a comment. I mean, we got it today, so here it is.
Mr. Mayor, I understand council's frustration. Last year, council received the draft budget in January. We all said we wanted to do it sooner. This year, I engaged council in August at the only meeting we had in August, to take your direction, and got direction from council. As you know, September was a bit of a wash for most of us. That I just could not, and council said when they gave direction, try to get it done in October. And we tried. There's just no way we could get this thing developed. I don't know if council can understand the number of people that have to contact this document before it's prepared. And at every level, we have to look at what we're going to do. So I'm trying hard not to apologize. I knew you wanted it earlier. Direction in August wasn't going to get this document done in October, regardless. It just wasn't going to happen. So staff worked very hard to get it to you here in November, and it's still a draft document. There's got a couple flaws in it that need to be repaired.
No, I get it. I'm just trying to figure out how much we can compress all of this. Councillor Minions?
Thank you. I just want to note that I'm quite happy with the schedule we have in front of us. I'm not totally understanding what everybody's concerns are, because it sounds like we have some who want to finish it earlier and some who want to have as much time as possible. I think, although I certainly don't agree with every aspect of it, we have a 5-year budget that has the bulk of the details already worked out. So it sounds like we're wanting to do more budget meetings, more public input, but I'm having a hard time understanding why, if we have already largely made up our minds on the direction we're going. I think we want to be really aware of not asking for input if we've already made up our minds. So I think this gives us quite a few meetings to work out the details and still meet our deadline. We probably will get it finished sooner, but if we do need that time, the time's there. So I'm quite happy with the schedule.
I look at it and I'm not, like I said before, I'm not sure that we're going to need those 3 TBDs, but I guess we'll see. Anything else, Council? So then on the motion to endorse the schedule therein as a working plan, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Also from the Director of Finance, a draft 5-year financial plan. Now we have a report to introduce the preliminary draft 5-year financial plan budgeting process. Councilor Washington, do you want to move receipt of that report?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. I move that the report from the Director of Finance dated November 2017 be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? Yes,
I'd
Councillor.
like to have a copy of it, please, in hard copy. It's really hard to read on the screen.
Okay. Not a problem, CAO.
Mr. Mayor, if I could take the opportunity to point out one error in the draft document to council on page 68 of our agenda package.
68?
68. And we'll refresh this and send council an updated copy after tonight. Line 2020. Oh, hang on, where am I? Page 68, sorry, line 74. Line 74, it's in the fire budget under communication systems.
I don't see the line. Over there. It's not on my screen. Okay.
Okay, it's up on the big screen in the room. So if you go across to year 2020, there's a $1 million addition in 2020 in that line. And I'm pretty certain that's a keystroke error. And so that we'll adjust that. That line's going to come down $1 million to 14,000, which is, and then there's a bottom line correlation on line, sorry, page 74, if we can scroll down to there. Again, yeah, so that highlighted line shows that the unallocated funds at this point in time for discretion, council's discretion, likely will populate some projects with some capital projects, so there won't be that amount, but you can add $1 million to that line of 31,000 in 2020. So there'll be $1,031,000 there. It's getting better already, yeah? So apologize for that error. We'll clean that up and get a clean copy to you.
Millions of dollars flying around. If only it were that easy to add $1 million.
If you say it real fast.
You look after my bank account too there, CAO. Could you, if you're providing Councillor McClellan with a hard copy of this, could I have one of those too, please? Other people in council wish one? Yeah, so one for each member of council, please.
I already got my request in. I was first.
Okay, thank you. On receipt of the report, all those in favor? Carried. And from City Clerk, assignment of corporate administration, we have a report dated November 14th, 2017 regarding assignment of corporate administration duties in the absence of our City Clerk. Councillor Sobey, do you want to make that motion?
That the report from the City Clerk dated November 14, 2017 be received, and that in the absence of the City Clerk, the responsibility of corporate administration be assigned to the Director of Development Services.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Councillor McClellan?
Just curious, is this a time-consuming thing? Because the Director of Development Services often told us he's overworked or busy.
It's not. It's just a matter of signing some things.
Just like that, eh?
Just like that.
Just add $1 million.
No, it's not time-consuming.
I didn't want anything else put to the back burner because we need another job.
No. All those in favor? Carried. And council, we have from the Director of Finance an ACRD request for funding. And if you recall, the request was $70,000 from our gas tax fund. We handle our money differently than the ACRD does. So the Director of Finance is suggesting that we not take it out of gas tax, but we take it from somewhere else in our budget. It's not that we wouldn't contribute, but that we'd take it from somewhere else. Does that more or less cover it, CAO?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Rothwell is recommending that we take it from Capital Works Reserve Fund. So if council chooses to support the request, if we took it from gas taxes, that would it would put us in conflict with UBCM's reporting rules for how those funds are used, because we don't own the asset. So it's much cleaner for us to take it from capital reserve, like we did with the Boardwalk project 2 years ago, well, a year ago.
Okay, Councillor McClellan?
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that the Council of the City of Port Alberni receive the report dated November 20, 2017 from the Director of Finance and comply with the request from the ACRD to finish the airport. Seconder? I'll explain that.
It would actually be better if you were more specific about where we would take that money from.
Okay, I thought receiving the report would have done that. So they take the money from the Capital Reserve Fund.
That's good.
Okay, if you want me to say that again for you, I will. Okay?
Is there a seconder? Then I'll second it. And Councillor Soba, you had a question?
Yeah, it's just a question if somebody could explain to me. We took a big loan for the airport. Is this a shortfall, or there was something missing? Are we adding something to the airport?
There was some over expenditure, some significant overruns for various problems, about $1 million in terms of overrun. Just some unforeseen expenses and some unforeseen hold up in the whole process, and the ACRD, in order to make this happen, they've asked each one of the regions to contribute out of their gas tax fund, and the other regions have contributed out of gas tax. We as a city aren't able to do that, so we're being asked to contribute $70,000 to complete the project. So yes, you're right. It has gone over.
So if we deny this, what would happen? Project doesn't get finished?
If we deny it, it would be. It's not that it wouldn't get finished. It'd be a challenge in terms of actually being able to do that, and it's us as part of the collective being asked to pay a little bit extra to get it completed. Councillor McClellan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Allman, he actually handed up ahead of me, so I'm cheating a bit here. A lot of the over expense and cost overrun is caused by needing land to be tenured to us from the province, and that had to go through the Ministry of Lands, Forests, and Natural Resources, or whatever other name they've attached to that, and that seems to be been a difficulty from day one. But I understand today the CAO of the regional district was actually meeting with the district manager again, or maybe first time for him, and trying to get that solved and sped up a bit.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alemany, then Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report that was attached here was really comprehensive, and it looked like it boiled down to like Councilor McClellan said, land issues, road building issues, just a lot of stuff that's come up. I don't have a problem with the request. I think, this is a major project, and it's a project that's grown. It's completed as far as the lengthening, but it needs a GPS and the lighting as well. So that's fine, and we're contributing $70,000 of $100,000 that they're requesting. So that's all fine and well. I was concerned though that in the report it sounded as though it may not be completed, all of the stuff, until 2020. That's a long time, it seems like, but
yeah. That isn't because of an issue with the ACRD. That's an issue with federal approvals and things in order to get it completed. So that's a bureaucratic reason rather than a financial or a problem with the contractors. No, this is the first time the ACRD's done something like this, and so there are a lot of regulatory processes that they have to follow through that took far longer than they had anticipated. Councillor Minions.
Thank you. My question's been answered.
Okay. If I could have this vote recorded,
Councillor
please,
Washington.
Mr. Mayor.
So if we go ahead with this, that money, who loses with us spending that money?
What do you mean, who loses?
Well,
we are spending $70,000.
We're spending $70,000,
so
what isn't going to get $70,000?
Okay, good question.
Mr. Mayor, those funds are in the Capital Reserve Fund, so there's, I think, $314,000 in that fund right now that we would draw on from time to time for projects. So it just means there's $70,000 fewer available for projects for us to draw from that reserve. So
Somewhere down
it's
the
not
road.
in any department operating budget.
Okay.
Just to add to that.
Councillor Alberni.
So there isn't, and I didn't go completely through all of the financial plan, but there isn't enough drawing out of the capital reserve fund in our 5-year plan that this would become a problem with it.
As I understand it, no.
Councillor Washington.
Sorry, sir. Just want, so that's $70,000 we could put into infrastructure or something like that rather than, okay.
Okay. All right. So we're going to have requests for a recorded vote. Councillor McClellan?
For?
Okay. Councillor Sobey?
Against?
Councillor Paulson?
In favor?
I'm in favor. Councillor Minions?
In favor.
Councillor Alanani?
In favor.
And Councillor Washington?
Against.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, council, I'm going to declare a 10-minute recess right now. Okay, council, we're going to reconvene here. Next item is at council direction from the Director of Development Services discussing a nuisance property, 3110 2nd Avenue, property known as the Carlson Building. We have a report specifically on that. Wondering, Director, if you could come up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council had asked for information on this property and our nuisance abatement bylaw. So the report kind of goes over, and a copy of the bylaw is attached, about what a nuisance is, and essentially how the bylaw works is, you know, normally if a complaint is received, you know, our bylaw enforcement officer would engage with either the person who's causing the nuisance or the property owner, and you know, actively trying to get voluntary compliance. If it keeps continuing, this is potentially where the nuisance bylaw can come into play, where if the activity is high and the calls are made, council can then consider that, and then if it's declared a nuisance, then if calls continue, they require attendance by the RCMP, operations, bylaw, etc. Then we could charge and bill for those services that are being rendered in order to resolve the nuisance that's being created. That's what council is being asked, or is looking to consider tonight. Council is, we are required to essentially give notice to the owners of the building and ask them so that was done. Registered letters were sent to the two owners of the property. You have one email from one of the owners. The other owner is in attendance tonight. But essentially, if council was to declare this a nuisance property, any future issues that occur, and that would be, you know, for instance, a loud noise party that the RCMP had to deal with, or if there was garbage related that our public operations had to deal with, then potentially a bill would be sent to that property owner if we had to remedy that situation. If no nuisances continue to occur, in other words, if the property is in good standing and we're not receiving the complaints, then of course bills wouldn't be accrued. And if council does declare it a nuisance, we should review it, you know, after 6 months or a year to see, okay, what's the status of the structure. And I'd be pleased to answer questions, and I know one of the owners is in attendance tonight.
Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've been reading the bylaw and your report. I'm a bit concerned that our bylaw doesn't cover what we're looking at, or what we're probably going to be concerned about. Parties, loud noise, littering and trespassing. You know, fighting, well, maybe that fits for some of it. But I'm just curious, do you think that this bylaw is strong enough? I know I've asked you this a couple of years back. Can't remember exactly your answer, but I do remember wanting to ask her. So if you can remember the answer, that would be good.
Well, we have a few different bylaws, because there's also, you know, a property maintenance bylaw that takes a different tact on this thing. This bylaw, and it was drafted almost 10 years ago now.
Took a long time to use it. And even then, we had a couple of properties we were looking at.
Yep. No, fair enough. And I know the community charter and some of the legal advice that was received at the time said, here's the things that you can do with this. Here's the things that can be covered. Whether we haven't looked at this bylaw in a while, so whether there's other things we can cover, I don't know. We haven't done the research on that. We haven't looked at that. So I'm not 100% sure what council may want to try and add to this. We would have to go do a bit of due diligence to see if there's other things that could be added to this bylaw if that was a concern of council's.
Thank you. I think we'll probably be wanting to change it a bit, but for now, let's go with what we got.
I do like the your suggestion that if we do choose to go this route, that it be reviewed in 6 to 12 months. And it makes sense to me that that if we designate a building like this, we give with this particular category, that the building owner or owners have the opportunity to address their concerns for a period of time and see if there's some change in the building and the way it appears and the way it's used and the way that our services within the city need to interact with the building and with the tenants in that building. It has to do with responsible ownership and responsible maintenance. So I get that. I like that part. In the case of this particular building, some of the issues do in fact have to do with maintenance. And you know, it is a concern, but the other part of it is that I'm assuming that we would need to make sure that if there is something that is a concern underneath this designation, that we could actually attribute it to that building or the tenants in that building. Would that be correct?
Yeah, we would have to make every effort to do that, yes.
Yeah, okay. Anything else, Council? Okay, the owner of the building is here. One of the owners of the building is here. So if Council has any specific questions for him, or if the owner wishes to say something, maybe this is an opportunity for you, sir, to say, to identify yourself and come up and say something if you want to do that.
Sure. If you don't mind, is it okay if I sit here? Because I don't stand well. I have no movement in my right leg.
Okay.
If that's all right.
I think we can handle that.
I'll try and speak loud. I'm John Mortimer, co-owner of the building. My wife, who I'm separated with in Victoria, owns the other part of the building. So I reside there currently. I believe the building became for consideration as a nuisance property during the last year, and I was kind of out of commission for most of that time. There was a death that affected me very greatly, and I was unable to be in Port Alberni or to look after the building. And unfortunately for me, someone that was had agreed to rent on a lease basis, a commercial lease downstairs, decided that they would take over the
Mr. Mayor, could he get a microphone, please?
Sorry, decided they would take over the building
And just one sec, we'll get you a mic. Maybe just move, can you move the entire thing towards him?
No, but the cord's not going to reach anyway.
Okay, thanks very much. Cheers. Yeah, so they decided they would take over the building. This person, the police became involved and called me in Victoria, and they waited 3 or 4 months to do a raid on this person for drugs and various other stolen property things, which, again, I was not in town, and I ended up in hospital for a month in the psychiatric ward. So I really can't apologize for having 3 mental illnesses and ending up in that shape. And I will admit that things went downhill somewhat. Having said that, I'd like to give a backdrop that we came here 11 years ago to Port Alberni to be part of the solution in that corridor there, and we felt that at the time that given the construction of the condos down near the bottom of Argyle and so on, that would be an automatic connection between 3rd and City Hall area and the pier where the tourists are supposed to go. And so I say supposed to because I don't think we get enough of them there, but in any case, that didn't happen due to recession, due to many things, I suppose. And although I was a retailer for many years in different retail businesses in downtown Victoria, Toronto, and Vancouver, so I have experience at that. I didn't feel that was the right corner to put anything in commercially, so the upside potential in the building was always the empty commercial spaces becoming viable. And at this point, that still hasn't happened. I know I'm wandering a little bit from the bylaw here, so maybe I'll just drift back to the bylaw for a second itself. I had a look at it just today, and it says to declare a building a nuisance that you must go through a process, it seems, criteria being, first of all, to contact the owners and to do something about a complaint or complaints. I haven't been privy to what complaints there were, actually, and from whom. I don't know if I'm allowed to know that. I have a pretty good idea, but in any case, the next step would be for the bylaw officer to visit, which that has happened, but no tickets or any kind of fines have been levied, so I don't see that that criteria has been met in the evolution of this process. So I would submit, without even going any further into our wish to make the building look be a much better looking structure. It just needs a coat of paint. The inside is kept clean, free of garbage, and is a lot of money has been spent on the apartments over the years. I can't say that a lot has been done in the retail stores, spaces downstairs. One was converted into an apartment for me, so it did receive $20,000 or $30,000 worth of attention, as has most of the apartments inside there. So from the outside, because of the painting that was not commissioned by us and is not there with our permission, it's graffiti, I guess, on there, and that we intend to paint it over. Funds are an issue. I don't read mainstream media for personal reasons, and I was unaware of funds that were available to corner locations downtown, like our building, of $7,500, I believe, grants, and others near me took advantage of that, but I wasn't aware of it till too late. So I believe it's being offered again next year, and I'd be applying for it. I live on a pension disability of $760 a month, Canada Pension Plan disability. So it's the building has lost us, I guess my wife and I, our savings for sure in 11 years, and I'm near retirement age, as you can probably see, and that has not been the best thing for us either, Having said that, then the next criteria was back to the nuisance. It was not going to help me sell the building, although I have two offers, one from the fellow next door. I understand that a Victoria company is interested in tearing down the building and actually using that whole block and putting a building somewhat similar to the one that's where the Somas Motel or hotel was. And you might think that would solve your problems in that block. I don't agree. I think that if that's the case, that the people that I house, and many I house through the people that are there are housed and have mental illnesses and addiction issues. They are often come through the ACT team and the VIHA, and I try and make sure they're okay. So we do get a few more police calls than maybe average, but I don't know what average is. The report here cites 16, I think, visits in 2016 and 17 up to the middle of October. This year, I don't think that's excessive. We have domestics once in a while and the usual, but there's no littering by the tenants. There's no garbage dumping by the tenants. Any tenants there were some tenants and squatters downstairs when I came back here in August. That problem has been taken care of, and there's nobody living downstairs at all now. I'm still in cleanup phase because it's very expensive, and I do dump runs in my truck to get rid of the stuff that was left there in my absence. There's a window that was broken this week by a tenant, and It's not resolved yet, but the mayor was saying that he heard that a whole bunch of windows were broken. That's not the case. One was broken, and sometimes rumors get around in Port Alberni that aren't quite true, you know. We're making the effort. We've complied with the fire department. There's an inspection on the 2nd of December, although that date doesn't seem right because I think it's a Saturday, but around about the 2nd of December. And the fire alarm system, which had some damage done to it by vandalism. Just speaking of which, I've spent $38,000 on glass in the last 8 years for downstairs. Just random people smashing glass out. And I was thinking also today that it might be an idea that the city put some garbage cans down in that area. They have them on 3rd, and most cities have garbage available, so people that are passing by don't litter the sidewalks and things, which we try to keep clean, you know. So I guess I'm saying it's not as bad as it may appear. Is it the best place to live in town? No. 2nd and Argyle isn't, you know, there's no doubt about it. And I would rather put a retail store in there. I still have plans that maybe that might come through in the spring this year, all things being equal. I don't know if I want to sell or not, because I need a home somewhere, and I tried to make Port Alberni my home. That's the case still up until this moment, but declaring it a nuisance isn't going to make it any better, you know, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think it meets the criteria for that. I think we're complying with what we can. I had a meeting with the police, the bylaw officers, the fire department, and myself back in September, and we've been keeping a fire log on the hour while we repair the fire alarm system. It's just a technicality. There's 5 apartments upstairs, although one's empty. The fire alarm system isn't required for 4 or less. It is for 5. We've always had it up to date and inspected every year. And I intend to, I know that it will be fixed. The last little bit of the fire alarm system that needs repair will be done by December 2nd. So I can't paint to the spring. I can paint over maybe the one-eyed New World Order sign or whatever it is that the graffiti that was on there. I might be able to manage that. But it's clean now. There's no garbage outside the building. There's no, we keep the 3 garbage cans upstairs inside the building. I think there are buildings that are far worse in town. So I guess I'll leave it at that. If there's some questions.
Okay, Council, have any questions to Mr. Yearman? Sorry, Mr. Mortimer. Okay, Mr. Mortimer, thank you so much for your explanation. Any other comments, Council, on this particular issue? We have a recommendation to declare the property as a nuisance property based on the information that we've been given and concerns that that we've received. Councillor McClellan, do you want to move that motion?
The Council of the City of Port Alberni declare the property located at 3110 2nd Avenue, Lot 1, District Lot 1, Alberni District Plan V1P 6800, bracket PID, :000-630-497, other bracket, a nuisance property.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? Councillor Alberni.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch your name, but no, thank you. I want to thank you for coming and saying that. It's important for us to be able to hear from the owner, and I think you've given us a lot to think about. I know you've given me a lot to think about. So, yeah, whether I support or not support the motion, I'm not entirely sure at this point. But I think it's worth noting that we have someone who does appear to be trying, which isn't always the case with building owners in town. So.
Anything else, Council? Mr. Mortimer, one of the things I want to say to you is I'm impressed with the progress that you have been able to make at this point. And if this motion does pass, then what occurs, of course, is that for a period of time, you continue doing the kinds of things you're doing. There would be absolutely no reason to trigger any of these. And it sounds to me like you're working hard in order to keep this under control. Councillor Washington. Mr. Smith, do we need to include in the motion the period of time that it's declared considered to be a nuisance property, or is that just understood that that's the case?
Staff would be bringing this back after a certain period of time regardless, but if council wanted to specify something, you could.
Okay, well, I personally would feel comfortable if it was brought back to us at the end of 6 months, if this does happen to pass. Councillor Sauvé?
No, just for the purpose of monitoring process, I would like this file to be reviewed after 6 months. So if you just require an amendment to the motion, then I'd be willing to make so.
But if you don't need it stipulated, then we'd be understood.
That would be something that I would consider. Council's talked about that, so you wouldn't have to do that. We would certainly make a note that we would bring it back within 6 months.
But at least after 6 months, we could say, go one way or the other, or continue it or extend it, but that's fine.
CAO, comment?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call council's attention to the fact that there is an email from the other co-owner, Lisa Urchuk, and council, the next item on your agenda is to receive that email. So I just want council to be aware and clear that you have received and read that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, council on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, then council, our next item is the email from Lisa Urchuk, who is the co-owner of the building. A motion to receive that, Councillor McClellan?
The email dated November 22nd, 2017 from Lisa Urchuk, co-owner of the Carlson Building, requesting council not to declare the building a nuisance property be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, council, our next item, Argyle-Stevenson boundary extension. We have a report providing an update regarding the next steps in the Argyle-Stevenson boundary extension process. And we need to obtain council's approval to extend deadlines in regards to the alternative approval process. Councillor Alemany, do you want to make this motion, please?
The report from the city clerk dated November 17, 2017 be received, and council for the city of Port Alberni directs staff to proceed with the alternate approval process to obtain the approval of the electors to include lots 5 and 6, block 16, district block 132, ACRD within the city's boundaries, with a deadline for receipt of elector response forms indicating opposition to the proposed boundary extension of 4:30 p.m. on Monday, January 8, 2018.
Your seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And City Clerk from the AV Community Forest Corporation, we have a report dated November 16th from the City Clerk requesting council to endorse the Alberni Valley Community Forest Corporation resolutions of shareholder in writing. Councillor McClellan, do you want to make that motion?
I move that the Council of the City of Port Alberni endorse the Alberni Valley Community Forest Corporation resolutions of shareholder in writing as presented.
I'll second that
And
motion.
note the capital letters, that's an official thing.
Okay. Any discussion, council? All those in favor? Carried. And council, we have a current status report. Any questions, council? Councillor Paulson?
Just items 8, 10, and 11, and this isn't for immediate, but just a quick reminder to staff that next year is an election year, and these are all election-related items. Maybe they need to go to medium priority over the next couple of months or something. But
Okay. Anything else, council? Councillor Minions, do you want to move receipt of the status report?
Move receipt of this month's status report.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And from the Parks, Recreation, and Heritage Department. Let me try that again. Parks, Recreation, and Heritage Department.
Excellent. So you've got my staff report in front of you there. Just a couple of quick items to touch on. An update that our review of our ammonia plans are well underway, including incorporating WorkSafe BC's recent ammonia inspection initiative. So after the tragedy in Fernie, WorkSafe BC did come out with a formal ammonia inspection initiative. We've since been toured through our facilities with WorkSafe BC representatives. Happened last week, so they're going throughout the entire province to ensure that facilities are up to speed with the new initiative. So they visited us last week, and so things are well underway there. And the other item I wanted to bring to your attention is that the annual Winter Wonderland will run from December 5 to 26, closed on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So the public skating schedule, just to remind the community, so free admission and skate rentals by a variety of organizations, sponsors throughout the community, is included in our current leisure guide. And you just never know when a certain bearded gentleman may show up at Winter Wonderland. So just a reminder for families to attend those events. And I turn over to council for any questions.
Director Thorpe, I really like the style of your reports. They're easy to read and yet visually appealing, so we can see what's there. Sorry, it's probably just my grasshopper brain, and I should have asked this question in the status report, but could you please remind me what ever happened with that chemical storage building that we approved for in behind the Aquatic Center? Was that taken off? Was it something else decided to do with that, or you completely haven't been brought up to speed on that?
No, it's complete. So there is a current storage locker behind the Aquatic Center.
Yep.
Is functioning very, very well. So just to recap for everyone as well, that we used to hand move items and sort of under a hobbit hole under the stairs, and it was just not an ideal situation. Right. So now all of our chemical deliveries are pulled up right to the back door, and it's a straight shot, so a direct, there's no up and down stairs. So we've got the ability to truck any chemical right to that container. So it's a discrete container. And it is located directly outside the Aquatic Center.
Thank you. I hadn't noticed it, and I just.
It was very discreet.
It was very discreet.
It's that
hidden by the trees or something.
Thing again, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. Council, any other questions? It definitely was. Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of that report?
That the monthly report from the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Heritage providing information about current departmental operations be received.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Council G, bylaws, we have a very complete report on the lengthy public hearing that we had in the McQuina area. Councillor Washington, do you want to move receipt of that report?
That the report from public hearing held November 14th, 2017 regarding bylaw number 4950 be received.
Seconder? Second. All those in favor? Carried. And Council, we have under correspondence for action, the first item is the Wounded Warrior Run BC. We have a letter requesting a donation for their upcoming Wounded Warrior Run, which begins February 19th. And Councillor Sauvé, do you want to move receipt of that?
That the letter dated November 16, 2017, requesting a donation for their upcoming Wounded Warrior Run, which begins on February 19, 2018 in Port Hardy and ends in Victoria on February 25, 2018, be received and referred to CIP for consideration.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? All those in favor? Carried. And Council, we have the late item that was added, item on the letter from the Cycle Alberni. Council wish clarification on this letter. Councillor McClellan?
Did we not include this in the CIP grant on the advice of our CAO?
We did, I believe, and I believe he also said he wanted us to just make sure we formally received it.
Mr. Mayor, the city did receive an application from Cycle Alberni under the CIP program, and today we received this, and they requested that this be received as a late item. So we need council to at least receive it, and then if you have specific direction, to give that direction.
Okay. You're moving receipt?
Oh, sure.
And referring it to?
Yeah, I would move receipt of it, excuse me, receipt of the letter from Sarah Thomas and John Mava. And if it needs to be referred back to CIP for next year, then fine, but I think we should be talking to the school board from what they said.
Okay, is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And no proclamations this meeting. However, we do have some informational correspondence. City Clerk, do you want to go through these? CAO, do you want to go through this correspondence?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thankfully, there's only 5. First one from Prime Corp, an email dated November 16th, 2017, advising that there will be a 3% levy increase, 2% of that increase in operating costs, and 1% to be put towards a reserve for future required technology evolution investments. Secondly, from our advisory traffic committee meeting, the minutes from their October 18th, 2017 meeting. Third item from the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, AVICC, information regarding the 2018 AVICC Annual General Meeting and Convention, the resolutions notice request for submissions and call for nominations for the AVICC executive. And just to note that the resolutions and nominations deadline is February 14, 2018. The fourth item from the Ombudsperson Office, a report received November 20th, 2017, providing a copy of files closed from July 1st to September 30th, 2017. And lastly, from the RCMP Municipal Policing Agreement, a letter dated November 16, 2017, providing expenditures to date to October 31st, 2017.
Thank you. Council, anybody wish to pull anything out? Councillor Alamani?
Yeah, just the first one. I read it a couple times and I just kind of read it again and I still don't know what prime is. Can someone tell me what prime is?
CAO? It's either you or Councillor Sauvé that knows it by heart.
Prime is, and Councillor Sauvé can do a better job. Prime is a branch of E-Division that does testing for us, and Councillor Sauvé can probably be more specific.
Prime is actually, Mr. Mayor, is actually the program the police use to keep all their database on and all that, and it's updated almost on. Exactly. It's a computer program that keeps all data of reported crime events and so forth, and it's what the investigators work on a daily basis.
And you can see that they're sticking to the same 3% increase that we are.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Anything else, Council? Then, Councillor Minions, do you want to move receipt of this?
Move receipt of the informational correspondence 1 through 5.
Okay.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Council, there is nothing to report from in camera, so that leads us to Council reports. The first one is from me. And I have a few items. November 16th, I was at the museum opening about the home front, World War II in BC. It was a great exhibit, and I spoke at that opening. Thank you to Councillor McClellan for showing up, and I believe that Councillor Washington was there, but my memory might not be correct. He was hiding. November 18th, I attended a meeting in Burnaby about various economic initiatives, particularly as pertains to the port and our solar projects. November 21st, was at the Premier's Awards event in Victoria. And that was a situation where provincial staff were nominated for in various categories for recognition by the Premier. It was an honor to be there, and our coastal exercise response was one of the nominees. We didn't receive the award, but it was an honor to be nominated nonetheless. November 22nd, along with other members of council, I was at the District Labour Council meeting and social. It was a short event, subdued, but it was nonetheless very good. November 23rd, I attended the Maritime Heritage Society event down at the Maritime Museum, and it was an art show done by students from ADSS that their art had been sparked by what they had seen at that museum, and it was good. It was well done. Nice to see the kids work. November 24th, I headed out to McLean's Mill for their official light up and craft fair, and the craft fair was their artisans showing their work, and even one person who's has a well-known last name who was showing her book that she's just written, and it was great to see everything that was there. And then on November 25th, I was at the Ninixu Gala, and it's a fundraiser to raise money for the elders in the Huayet First Nation. So it was at the Italian Center. Great meal, incredible dancing, incredible singing. It was good to go. It was good to be able to be there and represent our city council at an event such as that. And that's my mayor. That's my report. I move acceptance of my report.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the regional district report, Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last regional district meeting was last week, and once again, the Sprout Lake, two situations on Sprout Lake took a fair bit of discussion. They had a lot of presenters from Sprout Lake opposed to an expansion to a marina, and the owner, or the proponent for the marina was on vacation, so he's getting a chance to come and speak, even though it was turned down by the Sprout Lake Advisory Planning Committee. And they also actually did some new terms of reference for the Personnel Committee, and actually several of their committees' terms of reference, which was quite interesting. And since the meeting, the report is that the weir has kind of gone away anyway, and the logs and the docks that were up against it are now down somewhere between there and the Alberni Harbor. As of yesterday, I couldn't find them when I went looking for them, so the guy that was texting me steady about it said, well, they're probably in the harbor, so quit worrying about it. So I don't know if, Mr. Mayor, if you know any more about that, but it's definitely part of the regional district. And the other report that happened after the meeting was that the airport flooded and had to be shut down due to a problem with a culvert, and I think it was not a well-designed culvert, but that we're still figuring out. And that concludes my report. And I make a motion that you all accept it.
And I'll second that. Any questions, Council? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now on to Councillors' reports. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Short and sweet. November 20th, we had our Committee of the Whole meeting. 22nd District Labour Council and Social, along with yourself and Councillor McClellan. And today with the Audit Committee before all the other meetings today. And that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, just on the 18th, I was at the BC Lung Association get-together at the Legion, and this was to do with air quality. It was a really good event. Unfortunately, I don't think it was very well attended. There were not very many people there. So I do hope that in coming years, when they come back, that more people will go. And if you do, the reason I know it probably wasn't attended is because both I and my son won something in the draws. So that probably means that there were only 5 people in the draw. So there was lots of stuff there to do and to learn. And I got my flu shot, which didn't have anything to do with air quality, but that was handy too. So it was a great event, and hopefully they come back. It was well done. Other than that, nothing to report, except the City Audit Committee today, and that's it for me.
Thank you. And Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board meeting where we talked more about different expansion projects and possible new libraries being built all over the island. And Civic Affairs Committee meeting, various discussions, but nothing specific to report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Paulson?
I don't have much to report, but I haven't been idle. As of today, we now have 6 brand new employees for the Alberni Bulldogs. We only have 6 employees in total, but over the last 2 years, we actually have a turnover in a new direction. The second thing I'd just like to mention is I did visit Tom McAvey on Saturday, and Tom is home, much happier. He's quite frustrated. Sometimes the spoken word isn't where he wants it to be, but Tom has his rehab and everything laid out in front of him, and I think he's a pretty stubborn, determined individual. So I look forward to Tom being back to normal, and well, as normal as an ex-goalie can be, but okay, that's my report.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor, so I'm sure Tom really appreciated that.
That's not all he was.
Councillor Sobe.
Other than regular council meetings, I attended on the 18th of November, I represented the City Council at the Bread of Life Annual Harvest Dinner, and was able to donate a lot of prize there for fundraising for their annual dinner. So thank you for them for helping out the community and putting that up. And that's it for me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, also attended the Port Alberni Labour Council meeting, at which time they presented VAST with food vouchers and also donation to the Literacy Port Alberni, and one other group I just don't remember. There are new ones, but it's the VAST they give food vouchers to, and the students use them throughout the year, and other people donate them during the year, so that a lot of those people just don't have enough money for food and school and things, so it works well. And also on this coming Wednesday, the Community Forest is meeting for an evening meeting for the first time. I think someone wanted a supper instead of a lunch for payment, I guess. That's all these guys on the board get, is they're paying. So we'll be discussing definitely the motion from council to look at how we can expand the forest. And today I had several phone calls, Mr. Mayor, from businesses and other people very concerned about the crime on the streets, and very concerned about what they perceive as a lack of response from the police to their concerns. And so I'm hoping that they'll come to the Committee of a Whole meeting when we discuss the subject. And I guess right after this, I wouldn't mind making a motion. We do that on December 18th, since I didn't get my budget meeting that day. And I'll move that we adopt all these fancy reports.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, under new business, it sounds like Councillor McClellan, you have something.
I move we have the Committee of a Whole meeting, and I should put a caveat in here if possible, on December 18th for the next one we want on looking after everybody and crime and all them things. The state, I haven't got the words in front of me, they're back behind here, but.
Just let you know, Mr. Mayor, that I'm busy. It'll be a conflict to my schedule for December 18th.
Yeah, mine too. Okay. Has it been seconded? Has this motion been seconded?
No idea. Second.
Okay. Oh, that's what that noise was back there.
If the date has to change with Mayor, I'm not hung up.
Okay, but at this point, it's December 18th. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Councillor Alberni.
It's not new business. I think it's old business, but I forgot, so I'm going to bring it up now. Just wondering about a status on, we had made a motion to have the forest companies either a letter or have them come by. Is there anything that has happened along that?
Yes, they are coming on December the 11th.
Excellent.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I meant to bring that up too, so thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Question period. Anybody wish to address council?
You just smiled.
Okay. Then a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Carried.